Over 350 American heiresses married into European aristocracy in barely 50 years. They called them dollar princesses, and their money quite literally saved the British aristocracy from collapse. Let's go back in time and see what happened. Jeanette Jennie Jerome was born in Brooklyn in 1854, daughter of Leonard Jerome, a Wall Street financier so famous for making and losing fortunes, he earned the nickname the King of Wall Street. At a sailing regatta on the Isle of Wight in August 1873, the Prince of Wales, the future King Edward VII, personally introduced Jennie to a young aristocrat named Lord Randolph Churchill, son of the Duke of Marlborough. It was, by every contemporary account, love at first sight. The two were engaged within 3 days of meeting, but love didn't settle the practical matter underneath it. The Spencer-Churchill family initially opposed the match outright, until money changed their minds. Leonard Jerome offered a dowry of $250,000, worth more than $9 million in today's money, specifically earmarked to help repair Blenheim Palace, the crumbling ancestral seat the Churchills could no longer afford to maintain on their own. The negotiations took the better part of a year. The couple finally married in April 1874 at the British Embassy in Paris. Jennie became, by most historical accounts, the trailblazer for an entire phenomenon that would follow her for the next 50 years. She wasn't simply an ornamental aristocratic wife either. Historians widely credit her as effectively running her husband's political campaigns, and she later co-founded the Primrose League, a political organization that helped mobilize public support for the Conservative Party. Her son, born prematurely later that same year, after Jennie took an unexpected fall while out on a shooting party at Blenheim, would grow up to become Sir Winston Churchill. Jennie herself was no stranger to scandal. She reportedly had a coiled snake tattooed around her wrist, extraordinarily unconventional for a woman in high society. And after Lord Randolph's death in 1895, she was linked romantically to King Edward VII himself, among several other prominent men. She married twice more before her death in 1921. Her name may be less famous today than her son's, but without Jennie Jerome, there may never have been a template for what came next. 2 decades after Jennie Jerome broke the ground, the most famous dollar princess of them all would walk down the aisle in tears, and the world would call it a fairy tale anyway. Consuelo Vanderbilt was born in 1877, the only daughter and eldest child of railroad heir William Kissam Vanderbilt. Her mother, Alva Vanderbilt, was one of the most ruthlessly ambitious social climbers of the entire Gilded Age, determined to force her way into New York's old money establishment by any means available, including, ultimately, her own daughter's marriage. Consuelo was, by her own later account, in love with another man entirely when her mother identified her target, Charles Spencer Churchill, the 9th Duke of Marlborough, a cousin of the same family Jennie Jerome had married into, and, like the Churchills 20 years earlier, desperately in need of money to maintain Blenheim Palace. According to multiple biographical accounts, Alva effectively imprisoned her daughter, restricting visitors and correspondence, until Consuelo agreed to the match. On November 6, 1895, Consuelo Vanderbilt married the Duke of Marlborough. Newspaper accounts at the time noted she arrived at the church having clearly been crying. Her father settled a dowry of $1.6 million on the marriage, along with an additional $2 million in railroad stock income, a combined settlement worth roughly $60 million in today's money. The marriage was, by every account, a genuine misery for both parties. The Duke needed Consuelo's money, not her company, and the couple formally separated by 1906. When Consuelo sought a Vatican annulment decades later, in 1926, her own mother testified under oath to make it possible, stating plainly, "I forced my daughter to marry the Duke. I have always had absolute power over my daughter." Consuelo eventually found the ending her mother's ambition had originally denied her. She married French aviator Jacques Balsan in 1921, a union she described as genuinely happy, and lived until 1964. Blenheim Palace, meanwhile, still stands today, quietly maintained in significant part by money that came from a Fifth Avenue fortune and a wedding day full of tears. Not every dollar princess story ends in tragedy or scandal. One of them climbed higher than any American woman in the British Empire ever had before, or has since. Mary Victoria Leiter was born in Chicago in 1870, daughter of Levi Leiter, co-founder of the retail empire that became Marshall Field's. She met George Curzon, an ambitious British politician, and the two married in Washington in April 1895. Curzon's accumulated debts from an extravagant bachelor lifestyle were settled by his new in-laws, alongside a dowry of $200,000, a substantial sum that, adjusted for inflation and comparable to other dowries of the era, would represent several $million today. 3 years after the wedding, George Curzon was appointed Viceroy of India, and many contemporary observers, along with later historians, directly credited Mary's charm, political instincts, and social connections as instrumental to his rapid rise. As his wife, Mary became vice-reine of India in 1899, at the time the single highest official rank ever held by an American woman anywhere in the British Empire. Her time in India wasn't simply ceremonial. At the urging of Queen Victoria herself, Mary championed the cause of female doctors for Indian women who, for religious and cultural reasons, often refused treatment from male physicians. She personally raised more than 50,000 British pounds for medical scholarships, and a hospital in Bangalore still bears her name today. She also became internationally famous for a single garment, the extraordinary peacock dress, embroidered with real iridescent beetle wings, worn at a 1902 celebration for King Edward VII's coronation, still preserved and on display at the Curzon family estate. Mary Curzon died in 1906 at just 36 years old from complications related to a long-term illness. Of all the dollar princesses, she had climbed the highest and had the least time to enjoy it. Not every dowry saved a family. One of them was spent so recklessly it became a cautionary tale that outlived the marriage that caused it. Anna Gould, daughter of ruthless railroad magnate Jay Gould, inherited roughly $15 million upon turning 21 in 1895, worth approximately $391 million today. That same year, she married Count Boniface Boni de Castellane, a French aristocrat renowned across Paris for his extravagant personal style and legendarily expensive tastes. Boni didn't disappoint his reputation. He commissioned an enormous mansion on Paris's Avenue Foch, modeled on the Grand Trianon at Versailles and nicknamed the Pink Palace, purchased a 230-foot, three-masted steam yacht for $200,000. Worth roughly $6.6 million today, and spent lavishly on a long string of mistresses, burning through an estimated $10 million of Anna's fortune in barely a decade. Anna finally filed for divorce in 1906. According to multiple contemporary accounts, her revenge was precise. She cut off Bonnie's access to her funds, had him removed from the properties he'd built with her money and shipped his remaining clothing back to his parents' house, reportedly the only possessions he still owned outright. She remarried his own cousin, Élie de Talleyrand, shortly afterward and remained with him until his death in 1937. Even her second marriage carried genuine tragedy. In 1929, her eldest son from that union died by suicide after the family refused to let him marry the woman he loved. Anna Gould's story is a useful corrective to the dollar princess myth. American money didn't always rescue a struggling estate. Sometimes it simply funded someone else's ruin. Our final dollar princess never set foot in America at all, and her dowry ended up funding one of the single greatest archaeological discoveries in human history. Almina Wombwell was born in London in 1876, the daughter of Marie Wombwell, though it was widely understood in society circles that her biological father was actually Alfred de Rothschild, the immensely wealthy banker who never married Almina's mother, but supported both of them financially throughout Almina's life, publicly presenting himself as her godfather. In 1895, at just 19 years old, Almina married George Herbert, the 5th Earl of Carnarvon, a financially struggling aristocrat whose family seat, Highclere Castle, was in genuine danger of falling into ruin. Rothschild provided a dowry of £500,000, a sum modern historians estimate at somewhere between $50 and $81 million in today's money, which paid off Carnarvon's standing debts and secured the future of the estate. What happened next connects directly to a story we've already told you. The Earl of Carnarvon developed a passionate interest in Egyptology, and using Almina's fortune, became the primary financial backer of archaeologist Howard Carter's search for a lost pharaoh's tomb in the Valley of the Kings. For years, the excavations produced nothing. By 1922, Carnarvon had nearly run out of patience and money both, and told Carter he had one final season of funding left. That final season, Carter found the sealed tomb of Tutankhamun, the boy pharaoh we told you about earlier this season, the one whose own genetic inheritance turned out to be as consequential as his death. Almina's Rothschild money, originally intended simply to rescue a crumbling English estate, ended up financing the discovery that would define 20th century archaeology. Almina outlived her husband by decades. He died in Cairo in 1923, just months after the tomb's opening, amid rumors of an ancient curse the tabloids couldn't resist. She remarried, continued funding archaeological work for years afterward, and died in 1969, having quietly helped bankroll one of the most famous discoveries in the history of the ancient world, almost entirely because a British earl needed money and an American adjacent fortune needed a title. 5 women, 5 very different outcomes, from a trendsetter who became a prime minister's mother to a fortune that vanished into someone else's excess. Romance rarely had much to do with any of it. Historians estimate these marriages carried a combined $25 billion across the Atlantic. Very carefully negotiated cash, not love, saved these estates. Tell me which of these 5 women you'd never heard of before today. And if you want the deep dive on any single one of them, comment down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time.